All right, we're going to explore with angles a little bit more today, and I'm going to take a look at this first picture. We didn't really talk about what makes up an angle. And what makes up an angle is that we have two rays that are adjoined at a certain point, and that point is called the vertex. And if I wanted to talk about this angle, I wouldn't just say this angle, I would say angle B, because B is the vertex. I could also say this is angle ABC, or I could say this is angle CBA. Notice that B is in the middle when I named it this way. And that's because it's the vertex and it has to be in the middle. So I could not name this angle BAC. That's not allowed. The easiest way, of course, to talk about it would just be to call it angle B because that is its vertex. Last time we looked at some angles and we looked at ones that looked like this. We looked at complementary angles because they are angles that equal 90 degrees. We also looked at supplementary angles, which were two angles that equal 180 degrees. Do you remember what the other name of the supplementary angles were? Do you remember? It started with an L. They are also called a linear pair. Okay, notice the word line is in there. Okay, and they make a straight line. Oh, wait, is there another thing I could call these? Yeah, I think so. I could call these something else. I could call them a straight angle. Okay, angle ABC is a straight angle. Okay, we looked at some other names of angles last week. We talked about an angle smaller than 90 degrees, which would be acute. And I don't see a obtuse angle on here, but we also looked at obtuse angles, which would be an angle that is greater than 90 degrees. Today we're going to be adding some new vocab. And the first new vocab term we're going to add is vertical angles are congruent. That's what this symbol right here means, congruent. Okay? And they're formed by two intersecting lines. And they form something that looks like this. Does it have to be exactly like this? No. Okay, I could have something that's, really kind of skinny at the top and fatter here on the sides. Okay? But they're formed by intersecting lines. And these are important because they have pairs of angles that are equal. So angle 1 you can see here, and angle 3 have the same little symbol. They have one little line. That's because they are equal in measure. Okay? Angles 4 and 2 have two little angle measurements because they are equal. They are across from each other in the intersection. They are equal to each other. Those are important things to remember. All right, the next thing we're going to take a look at is when we have two parallel lines. And here, our parallel lines are M and N. They are parallel. Parallel lines never touch. Okay, they go on forever. And then they're cut or sliced by this line that they're calling T, and that line is called a transversal. Okay, so we're going to take a look at these lines and these angles. And first we're going to think about angles 1, 4, 5, and 8. 1, 4, 5, and 8. What do we notice about those angles? we had to use the vocab from the other day to name these angles, we would say they are, what are you thinking? Obtuse. They are obtuse angles. They are larger than 90 degrees. So all of the other ones, 3, 2, 7, and 6, are smaller than 90 degrees. So they are called acute. So in this diagram, all of the acute angles are going to be equal to each other. They're going to be exactly the same measure, and all of the obtuse angles are going to be exactly the same measure. So if I told you the angle 1 was 120 degrees, you could tell me how much each other angle is. Well, angle 1 and angle 3 form what? A straight angle, a linear pair. They are supplementary. So they have to equal 180 degrees. So angle 1 and angle 3 have to be 180 degrees when I add them together. So what does that mean 3 is? That means it's 60. The other angles that are acute, 2, 7, and 6, they're also going to be 60. Well, what do we know about 2 and 3? Why is this true? Well, it's a vocab term we just looked at today, and it starts with a V. They are vertical angles. 2 and 3 are across the intersection from each other. That's why they are equal to each other. So what do we know about 1 and 4? They are also vertical angles. They are across the intersection from each other. Well, if I were to separate these lines, I'm going to put a dotted line here, and compare this picture on the top to 5, 7, 6, and 8 on the bottom, what do we notice? Well, 1 and 5 look like they're in the same spot. Oh, well, they are in the same spot because they are called corresponding angles. Okay, so 1 and 5 are equal in measure. So if 1 is 120, so is 5. Well, wait, if 5 is 120, then 7 has to be 60 because 5 and 7 make a linear pair. Or three and 7 are corresponding. How about 2 and 6? They're in the same corners, so they are also corresponding. And the last pair of corresponding angles would be 4 and 8. So they're equal to each other. So we know 6 is the vertical angle to 7, so it makes 60. Well, 6 and 8 make a straight line also. They're also supplementary, which makes 8 120. Or we could have looked at 5 and said 5 was the vertical angle to 8. So there are many ways to prove whether or not these angles are equal to each other. Okay, we're going to talk about 2 other terms. So corresponding was on your paper, it's way down here, and it gives you the pairs that are corresponding. There are 2 other terms I want to take a look at, and they are here in the middle of your paper. They are alternate interior angles and alternate exterior. So I'm going to have to erase what I have up here. So if you didn't have this down, please make sure you pause this and get it down. Okay, so interior means what? The word interior. The interior of your house is the inside of your house. So the interior of these lines would be there. It would be 2, 4, 5, and 7, the angles that are listed here. Okay? The exterior would be 1, 3, 6, and 8. The exterior of your house would be the outside. So on the outside of the parallel lines, that's what we have. Okay? So then it talks about alternate interior and alternate exterior. Alternate interior means, what does interior mean? Interior means the space here okay? And angles that would be across from each other, because they're alternate of each other, would be 2 and 7. And then the other pair would be, I'm going to use a different shade of pink here, 4 and 5. Okay? Exterior would mean on the outside, and alternate each other would mean that they are on opposite sides. So 1 and 8 would be alternate exterior angles, and 3 and 6 would be alternate exterior angles. When we're talking about alternate, we're talking about that they are on the opposite side of that line T. Okay, opposite each other, opposite sides of the line. They are important because they're equal to each other. So we know that vertical angles are equal to each other. We know that two angles that make a straight line are supplementary. But now we also have this extra vocab of alternate exterior and alternate interior, and then corresponding, meaning in the same corner. So I'm not sure this packet's in the exact order I want it to be in, but I'm going to scroll down here to the end. And it says, write the relationship for each pair of angles. And we have a word bank. We're going to use corresponding, vertical, alternate interior, alternate exterior, or supplementary. So I'm going to use colors here, J and F. J and F. Well, they're not next to each other. They don't make a supplementary pair. They are both acute angles, which means they wouldn't equal 180 degrees. They're not across from each other in the intersection. One's on the outside of the parallel line, and one's on the inside of the parallel line. So they're not alternate interior, alternate exterior. They are going to be corresponding. They're in the same corners. Okay? E and G. So I'm going to switch colors. You may want different colors for this activity. E and G. Oh. Well, they're next to each other. They form this straight angle. So they are supplementary. Let's use a color I haven't used yet. J and K. J and K. Oh, well, they're in this little intersection and they're across from each other. So they are called vertical angles. So you're probably going to want some highlighters or colored pencils, crayons, or you could just use a pencil and then erase which angles you're talking about each time. So you're going to complete the rest of that on your own. I want to go back up here to the top and look at this first one. It says angles in a straight line. So angles in a straight line are called supplementary. Oh no, I'm running out of space. So that means that 20 plus 60 plus 60 plus x has to equal how much? 180 degrees. So 60 and 60 is 120, and 20 is hopefully you said 140. So how much does this piece have to be? 40 plus 140 is 180. So you're going to be using that same process for the other problems on this page. Okay, practicing supplementary angles, finding the missing angle. Let's look at one of these examples. So it gives us that angle 2 is 133 degrees, and angle 3 is 47 degrees. Does that make sense? 47 plus 133 makes how much? 180 degrees, because they make a linear pair, supplementary pair, straight angle. What do we know about angle 2 and angle 4? They're across from each other, right? So if angle 2 is 133, then angle 4 is 133. If angle 1 and angle 3 are also vertical angles, then angle 1 is going to be equal to angle 3, so it's also going to be 47 degrees. Okay? There's one more vocab word, I don't think that was on this paper at the top, it's not, that I want to talk about. So you may want to add this in your on your paper, and it is adjacent angles. Okay? And adjacent angles are simply angles that are next to each other. So in number 2 here, angle X is next to angle 50. They are touching each other. They share this vertex in the middle. They share this ray in the middle, and they're called adjacent. They are next to each other. If we look at this pair down here, number 2, which angles would be adjacent in number 2? Angle 1 would be adjacent to angle 4. Angle 1 would be adjacent to angle 2. They share a common side. What angles would not be adjacent to each other? 3 is not adjacent to 1 because 3 and 1 are vertical angles. And if angle 1 is 107 degrees, then how much is 3? 107. Okay? I know that's a lot of vocab, and there is a Quizlet, and I highly recommend that you practice the vocabulary. Most of this vocabulary is in your toolkit, but not all of it, so it is important that you have these notes. You are to complete the rest of this and then turn in.